Before we dive into today's very special episode, we are going to acknowledge something incredibly important. Today is May 10th, which is World Lupus Day. And for me, it's not just a date on a calendar, but it's actually part of my everyday reality. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects the whole body, and it's unpredictable and often invisible. It can be pain, exhaustion, brain fog, and flare-ups can knock you down without any warning. But it is also resilience and adaptation and constantly learning how to listen to your body, even when the world doesn't listen.
So we wanted to hold space in this episode for what it actually means to live with lupus. Not just all the medical stuff, the emotional, mental, and everyday experiences that come with it. Because awareness isn't just about information, it's about being seen, being believed, and not having to prove your pain.
So whether you live with lupus like I do, or you love someone who does, or you just want to understand it a little better, this conversation we're about to have is for you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for listening with an open heart. Now, I will also say this might be a little bit more interview-like than our normal podcast episodes, just because Shana does not have lupus.
I do not, no.
So I'll be talking about my experience with just everything to do with lupus to celebrate World Lupus Day.
Yeah, it'll be more so me asking Sam questions.
Yay.
So, Sam, tell us a bit about your own personal diagnosis journey. And I know a bit about it. I know, like, how long did it take you? I know you were misdiagnosed with a few different things along the way. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I am very fortunate. I think the average time for a lupus diagnosis is about 6 years.
Wow,
yeah.
That's terrible.
And I was incredibly lucky because it took 9 months.
Wow, that's still, I don't know, for me, that still seems like a long time for a diagnosis.
I was diagnosed at 14, and started showing severe enough symptoms that we had to investigate it when I was 13. What happened was I was trying to eat dinner one night. It's so funny. You go through so much in the medical system. I don't know if this happens to you, but I know it was July. I know it was a Sunday night. I know
very
all of these
very
vivid memories of it. But I got this really, really intense stomach pain. Like it like genuinely felt like someone was stabbing me. And I felt so sick. I was like, I was nauseous. I had this horrible, horrible pain. And I told my parents, I was like, look, I want to keel over and die.
Yeah.
And my mum was like, and my dad were kind of like, it'll be fine. It'll pass. Like you're just eating. And so I actually had to wait 3 days before I saw a doctor.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I was coming home from school on the Tuesday, and I'm like in tears in the car with my mom. I'm like, I have to see a doctor. Like there is something, I might be dying. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm dying. Yeah. And so my mom took me to a GP, and the GP was like, they've probably got appendicitis.
Yeah.
Go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And then we went to the children's hospital because I was 13, and they were like, yeah, no, this is appendicitis, and I was admitted and I had surgery. And this, you would think this is a very me thing to do, but the day after I had surgery, I went to school.
That's very you.
Yeah.
So you.
I was getting an award at the assembly on the Friday. I had surgery on Thursday, and I wanted to walk across the stage. I did not do a very good job of walking across the stage. I just had surgery.
Oh, you little nerd.
I know. But the pain didn't go away. The pain and the nausea didn't go away once they took my appendix out. So also I don't have an appendix. But yeah, and
did you have your appendix? So you literally had appendicitis surgery, and like that was not like the reason for your pain.
I did have inflammation on my appendix.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, I had appendicitis, but it didn't it didn't resolve the issues.
Right.
My immunologist actually thinks in hindsight that it was the lupus that attacked. I didn't have appendicitis, but rather my immune system kind of went after my appendix, which is why, and it was still trying to do that once I didn't have the appendix, which is why I still had all of the appendicitis symptoms. But, there's no way to know, basically. And no, so I still had pain and nausea, and then I started getting fatigue and joint issue. Like I just was sick all the time. And a lot of people actually thought I was bullied a lot in high school, especially in year 8, which is when all this happened. And a lot of people thought that I just didn't want to go to school.
Right.
Now, as I just said, I went to school the day after surgery. I don't think that was the issue. I don't think it was, any normal kid would be like, oh, sweet, I just had surgery. I don't have to go to school for 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, next day, thanks.
You're like, nah, I got to get that award.
Yeah, got to get that award. And then it was back and forth because having a uterus and those reproductive organs, I got told a lot that, 13-year-olds get their periods. I'd had periods for 2 years by this point.
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't the issue, but no one's going to listen to a 13-year-old, I say in quotation marks, girl.
Yeah.
Let alone one that's having issues socially, Yeah. Lots of hypochondria. The surgical team wouldn't discharge us until we had a waiver. And my GP, my fantastic GP, who I still see to this day, love my GP, was like, maybe it's an allergy. Maybe you've got like celiacs or something, and maybe there's something that you're eating that is contributing. Like, it was all like stomach kind of stuff, like intestine stuff. Yeah. So my GP sent a referral to an immunologist to check for allergies, celiac, that kind of thing. And my immunologist, who I also still see to this day, this is about 9 months into all of this, and he did just a comprehensive panel. He tested for everything: allergies, celiacs, autoimmune condition, like everything. And the blood test results was like, yeah, you've got lupus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So quick in lupus terms, but geez, that doesn't sound quick to me. Wow. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it very much was a luck thing. Like if little things, like if they'd known I had an eating disorder at the time, they may not have investigated food-related things because I wasn't really eating very well. So there's a lot of, what if. So it's very lucky that it was found at all, I think, because it could have been really easy to be like, it's anxiety, it's this, it's you just have a period and that's just kind of part of it, or like there's so many things that it wasn't obviously, but that other people could have just assigned it to.
Wow. So talking about your personal diagnosis story, you mentioned quite a lot about early on you got dismissed quite a few times, being like, it's just anxiety, as you said. It's your period. What must that have felt like? Obviously, you said you had your period for 2 years beforehand. You know what is normal for your pain. You know that it's not just this. That must be incredibly, almost, I want to say, very dismissive, putting you down, saying, you don't know your body because you're not a medical expert.
I still face it a lot. Like, I find it really difficult to go to the hospital for physical health. I mean, and for mental health, but I won't get into that here. Yeah. For physical health, because it is so easy to even now that I've got the diagnosis, a lot of things are dismissed as, you've got an autoimmune condition that affects your whole body. It's just that. I had these issues when it came to my hip, where they're like, you have an issue. I don't quite remember what you asked, but I'm constantly dismissed in medical settings for one thing or the other, because that's just what lupus is. That's just your mental health. That's just XYZ. And it gets harder and harder for me. Like, I have some pain days where I literally cannot get out of bed. I can't even sit up to drink a cup of water. And if I was a normal, healthy person without these issues experiencing that, you would go to the hospital. Like, you would,
absolutely.
if an able-bodied person was like, holy shit, I'm in so much pain I can't move, that would signify something's wrong. And for me, it's like, oh, I'm just having a bad day. We're just going to lie in bed today.
Just another Tuesday. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you said before that lupus it's an autoimmune disease and you have flares. And so what exactly presenting symptoms?
Nowadays, I'm on a pretty good med regime.
That's good.
That means it's mostly, especially with now that it's getting colder, or cold for Queensland anyway.
Yeah.
I know you're from Tassie and it's not really that cold.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this?
the biggest thing is joint pain, and stiffness. Like my flare-ups kind of come in like my hands. I find it really difficult to use my hands in particular, where it's like, and so like the dexterity in my hands isn't quite there. Where it's like I might struggle to open like a soft drink bottle, or I might struggle to, like, some days if the pain's really bad, I can't write very well. That's like the biggest thing I kind of deal with now. Sometimes I get like a bit of a rash on my face. It's called a butterfly rash, and it just goes over like the bridge of your nose and onto your cheeks. Right. So a lot of people think I'm often sunburned. They'll be like, oh, you've been out in the sun. It's like, no, it's just my lupus. But I know, like, I had, and this is kind of paired with some of the emotional addiction issues that I had. But, when I was 19, my kidneys started failing. Wow. And that's kind of what a flare looked like a few years ago. That was a long, like 6 years ago now. And it's a little scary. Like when I started getting migraines, I had to double check that it wasn't the lupus attacking my brain. Like there's a lot of tests I have to do when I start experiencing something that's out of the norm for me, like getting migraines, to double check that it's not something caused by the lupus, because I have SLE lupus. I'm not going to say what that stands for because I cannot pronounce it. Okay. I'll put it on the screen so that people can see what it stands for. And that particular subset of lupus is the one that the S stands for systemic. So it's like your whole body. So it can affect any organ, including your skin. It's the reason I have gastroparesis now as well. So my stomach doesn't empty properly because it, at one point when I was about 16, started attacking my stomach. And it can cause, like, these things are like lifelong things. So my immune system attacked my stomach when I was 16, and just for the rest of eternity, I will have to take meds to help me eat. And it contributes to a lot of things as well. Like, my nutrition, it's not just obviously paired with the lupus, but having gastroparesis does impact my nutrition because I can't digest food as well, so I don't get all the nutrition that I need from it. So which then impacts my eating disorder recovery because, like, if I'm sure, like, when you experience when I experience symptoms that feel like my eating disorder, it kind of triggers this hypervigilance in me, like, oh my gosh, have I been doing the right thing? Even though I have been, it's just really like an offset of my lupus.
Wow. So it sounds really unpredictable and very confusing when you have these flares up, especially having, I guess, what you could call more so like invisible ones, like you were talking about the joint pain and the fatigue, because obviously that's not something other people can see.
No, and because it's unpredictable, that some days I'm great. Some days I'm like the strongest person on the planet. That's probably a bit far. But sometimes I've got the strength and sometimes I don't. And so I might have to cancel on friends because I've woken up and I can't leave the bed. And other people understanding that can be so challenging. And again, I'm really lucky. I've got people who have in my life that have experienced a lot of different, specifically mental health stuff, and understand what it's like to need to cancel and all of that, and don't take it to I hope at least not to me, they don't appear to be taking it too personally. That I'm like, actually I don't have the energy or the effort today to do that.
And so how are you able to cope with this uncertainty and knowing that this is something you're going to have for the rest of your life? Just knowing that one day you'll be fine and then the next day it might be attacking something like some other different organ.
I very much take my physical health. I've learnt to take it as it comes. So there's a lot of like work that I have to do that's like almost like mental prepping, like not becoming too overly hypochondriac about something. Like everything, at least in my experience, everything's been kind of resolved eventually. So it's making sure to book in. I talk to my GP a lot where I'm like, hey, this is happening, can we check? Like I've recently had a rash on my face that's been hot and itchy and bothersome. And sometimes that can indicate that I'm having a flare-up. So I just waited to see my GP. I got the blood test form and she was like, yeah, of course. And it's kind of taking it almost one day at a time. Managing. There are other things I do, like I have to make sure to, you know, pace myself, which I, as you would know, I'm notoriously bad at, seeing as you have access to my calendar. You know, little things like I do, in the past, I haven't been doing it so much now, but using the Pomodoro technique, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically working for 20 minutes, taking a 5-minute break, working like it, you know, setting a timer for yourself. I've used that in the past to kind of help with the pacing. I try not to spend too much time in the sun. That's like a really big thing. Sunlight can trigger, especially with the meds that I'm on, sunlight can trigger flares. So I try to go out sometimes because sun is good for you, but for me, it's in a lot smaller doses. So I, you know, try not to like spend all day at the beach or whatever. You know, making sure, and this kind of applies to all of the conditions I've got, but just making sure that I'm trying to be as nice to myself as possible. I have other things, like I wear compression gloves to my hands. Like if I spend, I wear them pretty much all day in winter because it's too cold for my hands to adjust. But in the summer, like if I'm having a bad day with my hands, I'll put the compression gloves on for about an hour or two, and then my hands kind of get used to all of that. There's lots of little strategies that I do. But it was really hard to get there. And I think nurturing my mental health and the other mental health disorders that I've got has helped a lot. And being in recovery has helped so much because I can actually put these strategies in place.
So you say, so this started for you when you were 13. And from what I know about you, this is basically where your health journey sort of started. And so when you were going through all this, initially, were you, I feel like there must have been, at some point, there must have been some sort of grieving period for your old, well, I want to say old body, but grieving for your body and your mobility and the life you used to have before all.
So interestingly enough, I went through my grieving period. When I was first diagnosed, I used alcohol and drugs to deal with it. So I don't remember a lot of my teenage years from that because I was so out of it and intoxicated a lot of the time. But I went through, when I was having issues, like when I was trying to find an answer for my hip, like in the issues I was having with my hip, I very much grieved. Like I was, in high school, I was a runner, like a cross-country runner. I was a gymnast, like I did aerialism, and I loved figure skating. And in the last maybe 6 to 12 months, I had this massive grief that I wouldn't be able to do those things again because I was now having more issues with my hip and joint, and I've got a mobility aid now, which I never had before the last 12 months. And so there was this massive period of grief that I had as I kind of started my sobriety. and realized that, oh my gosh, I'm not actually an able-bodied person because I'd been pushing through and just pretending I was able-bodied when I wasn't. That I kind of had to do 10 years after my diagnosis because I hadn't done that process. I don't think I'd done that process yet.
Yeah. Wow. So I understand that you have, for your specific lupus, lots of things can trigger a flare-up. So how do you navigate those specific changes in your body? Like, do you have like medication side effects? How does that affect you and your energy, if you have any of those?
Yeah, so to manage things, as I've kind of already touched on, I have meds, I see my specialists, I have a lot of physical health specialists, like I see a physio, an immunologist, a neurologist, like all of these physical health specialists. But they, especially the meds, come with a lot of side effects. I know this would have been when we were starting our friendship, but I actually went through a period where every single day I just could not stop throwing up. I don't know if you knew about that, but it definitely,
I didn't actually.
Especially like I take my meds and I throw them up. And I worked out that it was the medication, some of the meds that I was on was causing it. And so I spoke to, after ruling out like all of these other things, like I had all these tests, radiation done, like and I realized in a hospital stay where I couldn't take my meds that I had stopped throwing up until I could take them again. And I was like, I actually think it's the medication that I'm on. And so I spoke to my doctor about it and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the medication. And we swapped meds. We found a medication that wouldn't make me sick. And now I don't throw up when I take them.
Nice. That's amazing.
Crazy that. And that helps a lot because it means I'm actually getting my meds as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just the one that is making me sick. But yeah, that's kind of it. I have other things. I do stretching. I'm back into movement now, which has been really good, and helping a lot, like getting strength and flexibility back. The compression gloves, like all of these little things just kind of help manage those symptoms that I've got.
Yeah. And so are you aware when you may be having a flare coming up? Is there anything you do to be able to manage that, to make the episodes not as intense or anything?
It depends on what's causing it. Like if it's like a more major organ issue, not a lot I know. It's just, I just have to kind of deal with that as it comes. Like I said, with the migraines that I started getting from the lupus, I had to do an MRI, like a CT, like all of these things to rule out anything like serious. In terms of like pain flares and things like that, it's more, I don't know it's coming. It usually happens, I wake up and I'm just in pain. So thankfully I don't tend to have flares. For me at least, I don't have flares like over the day. Like I don't usually start the day fine. Good. And then by the end of it, I'm like in all of this. I might be in a little pain across the day, but that's dependent on what I've done. But the really bad flare days, I just kind of wake up that way.
Wow. That's, gosh. And I know you, like, because I know you personally, I know you have a very high pain threshold. So if you're in bed, it's like, damn, the pain must be really bad. Gosh. And so I know you briefly mentioned about the mental effect. What is that like when you have like an unexpected flare and you have to, you know, cancel on people? How does that, I feel like that must bring you a bit of guilt, you know, even though it's not your fault. How does that, are you able to navigate that? Explain to people?
It really depends, like who I'm meeting. But most people now in my life don't have, like, I've worked through a lot of the guilt with my friends and family already.
Yeah.
And I do occasionally need reassurance, but the people in my life now, I'm surrounded by people who love and care about me. So it's not as prominent. It's not never prominent, but it's not as prominent where it shows up. And usually just a little bit of reassurance that, hey, actually that's totally fine is enough to kind of squash it.
Yeah. Just give you that reassurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I have so many people that are just amazing in my life, that they look after me, they care for me, they make sure that I can get my needs met when I'm having when I'm stuck in bed all day, you know, bringing me food or medication or whatever I need.
Yeah. So why is World Lupus Day so important for you?
I think with any of the awareness days, there's a lot of invisible illnesses, and there's so many things. Everyone is fighting something that you don't know about.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, for me, celebrating World Lupus Day is about bringing awareness to something that people do have a lot of shame about, people do have a lot of guilt about, people don't want to be seen as less. I know I've experienced all those things where it's like, explaining it is complicated. Like, it's an autoimmune disease. And I hope I've done justice, but also explained it in a way that people understand. But it is really complicated.
Yeah.
And because it's unpredictable, I think having a day where people can celebrate themselves and the strides they've made, but then also bring awareness and talk about it and be like, this does affect a lot of people, is really important.
Yeah. Bringing awareness and letting people know that they shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you'd like other people to know, or things that you wish people knew about what it was like living with lupus?
I think just everything I've said, really.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else I could add, you know. And if you are supporting someone with lupus, patience, understanding is always really important, because it's hard when your body's not cooperating with you, and especially if someone's going through it, something more serious. Like, I know when I was in the hospital for my kidneys, I didn't have a lot of visitors. At the time, my life was not filled with people who did love and care about me like I do now. So visiting people, bringing, treats and puzzle books or whatever your loved one is into, because that's my interests and stuff. Yeah. And just being there and almost holding their hand through it is always important. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
No, I think that's everything.
About that?
No, I think that's everything. Happy World Lupus Day.
Yes, happy World Lupus Day, everyone. And thank you, Sam, for sharing so much information about it, about your personal journey, what's helped you. Very informative. Hopefully it helps someone out there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.